Hi, I'm Pranamya, and you're watching Pages of the Globe. So if you're new to my channel, basically I read stories, I tell you a little bit about the author who wrote them, and then I give you an analysis about them. I go pretty deep in, I give you a lot of historical context, and I promise you can trust me to be able to give you some deep insight on these stories. Without further ado, let's get on with the introduction. Alright, so today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to actually read a poem called If We Must Die by Claude McKay. Now, Claude McKay was a very, very influential figure in the Harlem Renaissance and a key figure in early 20th century literature. Some key facts about him: he was born in 1889, and he was actually educated by his older brother, who had a library of English novels, poetry, and scientific texts. He was born in Jamaica, but he moved to the United States in 1912 to attend the Tuskegee Institute, now called the Tuskegee University, but he was transferred to Kansas State University shortly thereafter. He is known for his poetry, though he writes novels, short stories, and essays. His poetry collection, Harlem Shadows, published in 1922, is one of the first books published during the Harlem Renaissance and contains his very famous poem that I will be reading today, If We Must Die, which is a very powerful call to resist oppression. Some notable works that you may have read of his are his novels, which are Home to Harlem, Banjo, and Banana Bottom, his poetry, Harlem Shadows and Songs of Jamaica, and his essays. His essays are quite reputable and famous because they cover topics of race, identity, and politics, contributing significantly to discussions within the Harlem Renaissance. Now, as for themes, his works often explore themes of racial identity, social justice, and the experiences of Black individuals in both Jamaica and in the United States. McKay's writing is marked by the use of traditional forms like the sonnet to address contemporary issues of race and oppression. Now, as for political involvement, he was involved in socialist and communist movements during his early years in the U.S., and he later traveled to the Soviet Union in early 1920s and wrote about his experiences there. Now, as for his later life, he eventually distanced himself from communism and embraced Catholicism later in life. He died on May 22, 1948 in Chicago, Illinois, and his work continues to be celebrated for its bold exploration of race, class, and identity, and he remains a seminal figure in African American literature and the Harlem Renaissance. Now, as for his specific works the work that I will be reading today, If We Must Die, it is, like I said before, it's a very, very famous poem, and it's a powerful call to resist oppression. It talks about how, honestly, I don't want to spoil any of it because it's such a powerful poem, but it has to do specifically with how to resist an oppressor. It does not specifically specifically mention the Harlem Renaissance or specifically Black people, which the story is presumably meant for, because during that time it was a very, very tumultuous time, a tumultuous period in America where racism and discrimination was at an all-time high. And so while the story is presumably meant for the oppressed during that period, because it never actually mentions anyone and it has such a beautiful, powerful message, it is still used globally to this day. Without any further ado, let's get on with the story. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story or poem you would like me to read next. If We Must Die by Claude McKay. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed. In vain, then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us through dead. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? like men, will face the murderous, cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back. The end. Alright, so that was If We Must Die, the poem by Claude McKay. Now, this is one of the most famous poems you'll ever read about racism and identity, and it's this kind of Shakespearean sonnet written by the Jamaican poet Claude McKay in 1919. And it is a poem of political resistance. It calls for oppressed people to resist their oppressors violently and bravely, even if they die in the struggle. Though the poem has been most often read as a call to resist anti-Black racism, it does not limit its calls for resistance to a specific kind of oppression. As a result, it kind of serves as this inspiration to a wide variety of oppressed people around the globe, and they fight for their rights and freedom. Now, what are some themes that we often see? First of all, we see violence, dignity, and resistance. If We Must Die is a poem about confronting oppression. The speaker addresses a group of oppressed people, a group that the speaker identifies with and seems to be a part of. These people have been stripped of their dignity and freedom and are in despair, cornered by violent oppressors. Faced with this desperate situation, the speaker proposes a radical solution for their suffering. The poem argues that violent, even suicidal acts of resistance are essentially the only viable option for this oppressed group, the only way they can reclaim their dignity and freedom. The people that the speaker of If We Must Die addresses are oppressed, so much so that they are in danger of losing not only their lives but also their humanity, which are two separate things, according to at least the speaker. The speaker describes these people as surrounded by monsters and quote-unquote mad and hungry dogs who will inflict 1,000 blows upon them. They are far outnumbered by these monsters. These metaphors indicate that the group of people the poem addresses is a minority community threatened by violence from a larger and more powerful group. The oppression that the group suffers threatens to turn them into animals, figuratively speaking, to deprive them of their humanity. As the speaker notes in line 1, they are in danger of dying, quote, like hogs. But the speaker's metaphors imply that the people who oppress them have also lost their humanity. The speaker consistently describes these oppressors as horrifying, inhuman creatures. Again, they are mad and hungry dogs and monsters. The poem thus hints that oppression diminishes the humanity of everyone involved, both the oppressor and the oppressed. The speaker goes on to propose a way for the oppressed group to regain its humanity: violent resistance. Essentially, If We Must Die offers two options to the oppressed people it addresses. They can either die like hogs or like men. Notably, the speaker and the group of oppressed people don't have any choice about whether they live or die. Their situation is so desperate that they can only decide how they die. But the speaker points out that not all deaths are equal. To die like hogs will only underline the oppression that they already suffer. However, to die like men will allow them to attain some measure of freedom and dignity and retain, in death, if not in life, the humanity that they are in danger of losing. As a result of their bravery, the monsters who continue to oppress them will be forced to recognize their humanity and to honor them, though dead. Now, that is it for my analysis for today. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read or poem you would like me to read next.